Writing is its own kind of thinking. It's not dictation from the self. You don't dictate from your ego onto the page. Instead, the writing, the music of the language draws forth from us things that we didn't know that we knew.
This is Daring to Tell, the podcast where writers read about their true lived experiences. Then we talk about writing and life. I am your host, Michelle Rado.
I never did see nothing like that. I never did dream nothing like that.
Why do we read and why do we write? One answer I've come to in doing this podcast is that I read to understand the world, I write to understand myself. So on this podcast, I indulge myself in conversations with other writers to understand the space between these two things. And I was so excited when I got a yes for my conversation today with David Stuart MacLean. I have mentioned from time to time on this podcast that I grew up as a Christian Scientist, and for me, that meant I never went to a doctor or the hospital, never took any medicine. This sort of an upbringing had many unintended consequences. Some I am still trying to work myself out of. But one of them is that I became an adult who flung herself wholeheartedly into the medical world, into the trust of doctors and tests and procedures and the medical establishment. By and large, this was a tremendous improvement for me. Most of the time, when you're sick, you go to the doctor, you get a prescription, you take a drug, and you get better. However, the opposite of something wrong is not guaranteed to be something right. Sometimes we may be told to take a drug for a very good reason, like we're traveling to a foreign country where insect-borne illnesses like malaria are possible, so we're given an anti-malarial drug before we go. We trust that it's safe, and we take it. That is enough of an intro, I think, for you not to be too confused in the setup for my conversation with David Stuart MacLean. His book, The Answer to the Riddle is Me, a memoir of amnesia, leapt out at me from the bookstore shelf, and I was immediately riveted to both the story and the writing. One more side effect of that Christian Science childhood is that I was taken out of science classes from time to time whenever the topic turned to disease. And so I was left with this sort of absence of information about medicine and illness. So I ended up learning about these things from other random places like sitcoms. And this might also be why one of my perpetual curiosities, maybe even obsessions, has been the idea of amnesia.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe it even started with a ridiculous scenario on an episode of Gilligan's Island, probably more than one, where someone gets bonked in the head with a coconut,
Yep.
forgets who they are, acts completely ridiculous, eventually gets bonked on the head again, and voila, they are back to themselves.
Yeah.
So as I was thinking of this, I thought, oh, there is a lot in this little nugget as I think about me. First, learning about a medical phenomena from a sitcom. Second, an implanted fallacy that in the course of a life, let alone a 30-minute TV show, we can succumb to some sort of tragedy and then be returned fully intact to exactly who we were before.
Right.
And three, the very idea that some random chance encounter, like a coconut falling on our heads, or something much worse than that, holds the potential to rob us of our very selfhood.
Yeah.
The idea that we can forget who we are.
Yeah.
So when I pulled David Stuart MacLean's book, The Answer to the Riddle is Me, out of the bookshelf in a local bookshop. And I want to also say the subtitle, A Memoir of Amnesia, I was riveted. I had to read it because just that subtitle is a sort of an oxymoron, a memoir of amnesia, a memory of forgetting. So I am so excited to be able to talk with you, David Stuart MacLean, today. Welcome to Daring to Tell.
Thank you so much for having me.
I guess I'll start by saying this book came out in 2014, right?
Mhm.
So it is 10 years old at this point. This is not a new book. Nonetheless, it lives on quite well as a story. And as I said, I was riveted by it. It is an incredible page turner of a book. And we are going to get to reading some of it today. But often I like to start by talking about sort of our writing backgrounds. And I was curious to know your writing story before the time that when this book takes place, when you sort of woke up and came to on a platform in India. But what was your writing story before that?
Yeah, I was getting an MFA at New Mexico State University, and I applied for a Fulbright. My Fulbright proposal was based on something I was working on at the time, which was getting low directional interviews with people and finding out their sort of spoken grammar.
What can you explain what that means to me? Low directional.
Just sort of like these prompts that I had written out on a page, so my voice wouldn't be on the recording, and it would just keep the person just telling stories as they went. And that sort of, I worked with a professor at NMSU on this sort of technique. And then I was interested in India because so many people speak so many different languages.
Right.
And so I was interested in the way their home languages sort of influence the way they spoke English, the sort of grammatical structures of those home languages, how they transferred over into the way they spoke English.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was basically, because I was writing a novel about India at the time, and I didn't want to go the Apu route
Mm-hmm.
because the Apu route is really highly offensive. And I wanted something more honest, something more pure for my characters to speak.
Yeah. Why did you pick India for your novel?
I had gone to India in 1998 with two of my friends and had an amazing time there. And then they left, and then I traveled by myself for 2 months. Um,
Yeah.
and it was just such an amazing time in my life that that's where the novel sort of came from.
I see. Yeah. It is funny, those little things that you go, oh, suddenly it becomes this hook
Yeah.
that you go, I have to follow it somehow. And I love the idea of studying and becoming familiar with the interplay of language and different languages. And the idea also of giving people prompts for them to tell stories, because I have to say that sounds an awful lot like what I've done for a very long time, like as a radio producer, and even now, like, so tell me about this. So, how did you come to that as a methodology or something?
Well, the people that I value as writers are very voicey writers.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a Grace Paley devotee.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm evangelical about Grace Paley. I think she's
Oh,
one of the most important writers of the last 100 years.
wow. I don't know her at all, so there's someone I will need to check out.
She's absolutely delightful, and her upbringing was she lived in New York, and there were all kinds of languages on her street.
Ah,
And so she wanted to be able to reflect those languages in her work.
wow.
And so that's what I wanted to do as well. I wanted to have the way people actually speak rather than the sort of stilted, plot heavy, the character needs to say this in order for the plot to progress sort of stuff. Instead, I wanted that magical weirdness, the electrical pulse of real language.
Yeah, exactly. I love the description of a voicey writer. And again, I feel like coming from a radio background too, I there is writing for the eye and then there's writing for the ear,
Hmm.
and it's very much tied into that. So that's how you came to India on a Fulbright fellowship and had this incredible experience happen to you.
Yeah.
Um, so there's sort of this chasm between, I feel like, your writing and what you were doing then, and then this experience that happened to you. And remind me what year you were there when you had this, I'll call it memory lapse at the moment because we'll learn a lot more about it. But what year was did that happen?
This was in 2002.
Okay. So, and then that was obviously quite some time before you worked on the book.
Right.
So then you had this thing happen to you, and you clearly had been working on your writing as fiction, but how did the idea for this book sort of intervene for you? When did you decide that this experience you wanted to become a book or had to become a book? How did that happen?
Like, so I was getting a PhD at the University of Houston in creative writing, and it was in fiction, and I was writing all these stories where people had lost time, like they had gone to jail, they had all sorts of ways that people lose time. And I realized that what I was doing was avoiding writing the thing that happened to me. Like I was writing in denial. And there was this moment, this sounds super dramatic, but there was a hurricane that happened in Houston while I was there. And I was locked in my place for like 4 days. And while the hurricane was going on, I decided to just sit down and write what happened to me. And that took a lot out of me, uh,
Yeah.
because
Right. What happened to you in India?
what happened to me in
Yeah.
India, that I had been denying what happened for so long. I had used it as a joke,
Hmm.
like an anecdote, like this wacky thing that happened to me. Wouldn't this happen to me? Um, and there's a thing about trauma when you anecdotalize trauma, there's like the shadow part of trauma that kicks against you doing that. It's like the trauma gets angry that it's being trivialized.
Wow.
And so I had to let that trauma have its day, have its voice, and be able to actually reconcile what happened to me seriously. And so I wrote this essay, and the essay went on This American Life, and then I got a book deal, and then I had to learn how to write a memoir. Um, uh,
Wow.
so I read a ton of memoirs and just sort of figured out how I wanted to be able to tell this story as immersively as I could.
Wow. That's such an interesting journey towards that. Did you what memoirs did you feel like were influential?
And David Carr's The Night of the Gun,
Oh, I read that book
I think that book is
quite some time ago, but it was
it's a
amazing.
powerful book. And then of course, I'm going to blank on everything.
That's okay.
Uh, but Laurie Slater's Lying, I really, really thought was phenomenal. Uh,
Yeah.
and then Frank, I'm going to get his name wrong. Stop Time,
Mm.
Frank Conroy.
Oh,
Stop Time,
okay.
which I think is phenomenal. I just read it again recently. And Patti Smith's Just Kids. And I just saw this way of being able to tell the story. Another moment that was really important to me in telling this story was I got to see Mike Birbiglia do his
Oh.
one man show in New York about Sleepwalk with Me.
Yeah. He was on This American Life for that, wasn't he?
Yeah,
I think I heard him doing some of that or part yeah.
yeah. And there was the way he told the story, I was so inspired by the way he went about it that it really, there's tonal similarities you could probably find that I borrowed from him, uh,
Mhm.
because I was so impressed by his craft, uh,
Yeah.
in putting that story together.
Yeah, yeah. He that was there's a couple moments that stick in my memory. Like I don't remember the whole thing, but when you say that, I go, "Oh yeah!" Like I think it was like the walking out of a hotel room window,
Window,
or
yeah,
yeah, like that just pops right back. So fascinating. So I also think that I think that as you referred to it, kind of this mystery or magical thing about the story needing to have its space, needing
yeah,
to come to the surface, and especially through a hurricane, which is kind of another traumatic. I don't know. I mean, it was if it's a hurricane, it's pretty darn
yeah.
intense. Do you feel like it was sort of a something that opened up that was like, I just have to do this?
Yeah, it was the sort of, seclusion, like I couldn't do
Yeah.
anything
Right.
else.
Right.
So I was locked in a room basically with this trauma, and I needed to deal with it. I needed to actually write down and wrestle with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so one other, had you worked on other, had you put other things out in the interim between your Fulbright and that work and your PhD and then actually writing this book? Were they sort of two separate endeavors or were you just writing
I was
the
writing, and the fiction I was writing just didn't have anything at stake
mm,
because I was writing in denial. I was writing avoiding something in my
right,
life.
right.
And because of that, my writing felt hollow.
Mm,
And I feel like that's one of those things about writing, that if there's something that you're avoiding, it's going to make itself known somehow.
yeah.
And so you either wrestle with it directly or continue to allow it to express its shadow essence in your work.
Yeah,
And I would much rather write it directly.
right. Well, I'm so glad you did. How much of it came out? Oh, you said you wrote the essay part then. Right, right.
Right. I wrote the essay, and the essay's a whole different beast. Like essays and memoir are
Right.
related, but behave differently, and have different rules.
Yeah. So the book, one of the things about it that I loved is I guess it's a formatic structure. I'll call them chapters, but I'm not sure they're actually chapters. It's just very short pieces. So each tiny scene or bite is maybe a page, sometimes less than a page,
Mhm.
sometimes like 2 pages long. Was that part of the plan from the beginning?
Yeah, I wanted to sort of have it be mimetic of the experience, that there were these blinking in and out of moments. And as you read the book, the chapters get longer as I'm able to retain more.
Right.
And so the beginning of the book is very short and choppy, and that's on purpose to sort of reflect how it felt in those moments.
Yeah. Well, it's also incredibly propulsive and it does mimic the experience as far as I can tell and I've never lost my memory, but I mean, God, I say that as a person who says all the time I feel like I have a terrible memory too, but you know. So, I was thinking because as I was going through this again before our conversation, the book on one hand, I feel like I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but at the same time, I feel like there's stuff we should talk about. I don't know if you feel like, okay,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
all right with, yeah.
yeah.
Um,
I feel like me living is a spoiler.
yeah. And I have to say that's kind of one of the reasons why I love memoir is because the fact that a book exists for someone is to me evidence of, okay, I survived. I got through this. I'm certainly a changed person, 9 times out of 10, I think is the story is endemic in this story. But yeah, I made it to the other side in some way and I'm here to tell you about it. And
Yeah.
I find that incredibly hopeful.
Yeah, and I think that's important as a distinction as opposed to this idea of expunging, um,
Right.
right? Like there's no there's a word for it and I'm totally blanking on it because that's the nature of the brain. Um, but there's no sort of expunging of the trauma from your life. You don't write it and then it's gone.
Right.
Like you write it and you have a better relationship with your demons. Like you've opened up the closet and you know your demons. You've signed new peace treaties with them. It doesn't mean the demons are gone by any means,
Right.
um, but it allows for some modicum of peace to come,
Yeah.
um, and that's really important. And it was important for me to disrupt what I sometimes get frustrated with memoir, which is something happens, I get over it, and I'm all better now.
Right. The
And
Gilligan's Island story.
and it's like I wanted to write a memoir where it's like, no, 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 I'm not all better now.
Right.
Like I'm
Exactly.
still struggling with this. I'm still dealing with this, and how to satisfy a narrative structure while also leaving it open that life still is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, exactly. And that is, again, one of the many things about this book that is so brilliant and very well done. Um, so today, what I had planned is, as I usually do, is for you to read a chunk of the book and we discussed which section, which is from early on in the book. But I was looking at it again and I was wondering, because the open is just so key to this, would you object to me reading the opening of it? I would. I love it so much and I really it's to me so I mean it's so visceral and so powerful. I would love to read. I'll just read the opening section and then if there's any other setup stuff, we can do
Okay.
that and then we'll have you read. Okay. So here's the opening of The Answer to the Riddle is Me, a memoir of amnesia. I was standing when I came to, not lying down, and it wasn't a gradual waking process. It was darkness, 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 then snap. Me, now awake. It was hot. My thin shirt clung to my back and shoulders, and my underwear was bunched into a sweaty wad. The heat left the ground in wavy lines, and the air was tinged blue with diesel exhaust. A woman in a burqa pushed past me. A small man in a ragged red vest ducked around me. He was hunched under the massive steel trunk on his back. The corner of the trunk nicked my shoulder as he maneuvered by. I was in the center of a crowd, half surging for the train, half surging for the exits. I stood still. I had no idea who I was. This fact didn't panic me at first. I didn't know enough to panic. In front of me was a train, a heaving, shuddering train, its engine half submerged in smoke, painted a deep red. It blasted its horns, then clanked and panted into motion. People waved to me from open windows as the train shook itself free of the station. I waved back and noticed the whiteness of my arm, covered in hairs the color of straw. I tracked the train's slow motion progress as I choked on the bursts of blue exhaust and stared at the receding car I wondered if I should have been on that train. I checked my front pockets for a ticket. Nothing, not even a passport. Now, I began to worry. I had lost my passport. I was in a train station in a foreign country without my passport. Then I realized that I couldn't even think of what name would have been on a passport if I had one, or what foreign country I was currently in. This is where I panicked. A man in a small nearby stall clanked a pan against a propane burner. He banged and scraped a spatula against the pan that clanged against the metal burner. The sound was impossibly loud, louder than the train had been. I wanted to ask the man for help. I didn't want the man to know I needed help. I wanted him to stop banging the pan. I could feel a heavy absence in my brain, like a static cloud. I couldn't remember anything past waking up. There was a thick mass of nothing up there. My muscles were taut, caught in a constant flinch, waiting for someone, anyone, to punch me. I was alone, alone with no idea how far I was from anyone who knew me. I was alone and empty and terrified. I wiped my face with both palms. I blacked out. Wow. If
Yeah.
that doesn't hook someone in, man, I don't know what will.
It's emotional hearing you read it.
Oh, I thank you. I mean, thank you for letting me read it. I just felt like I had to, wanted to. I don't
Mhm.
know. Um, so you're going to read from a little further in, page 35. And to set up this part, I was going to say you're at this point you're in a psychiatric hospital
Mhm.
is something that we know, and you have been assisted by incredibly kind-hearted people trying to help you. I don't know if you want to say any more than that.
Well, so my friend Veda found out that I was in trouble and visited me often in the psychiatric hospital. But one of the things he did was he went around to different libraries and found all the white people he could find, because he didn't want me to feel alone.
Mm.
So he would bring in these white people who I had no idea who they were, and they had no idea who I was. And so it began this, and in between I was hallucinating, disassociating like crazy. And so it was a really weird thing because it was people that I felt like I should know. And so I created this sort of double self, which is sort of like just going along to get along, just sort of agreeing with whatever they said, and just being as vacantly pleasant as I could.
Even with that much hindsight now, as you describe it that way, I think, oh my God, what even more of a mind fuck that kind of is or was or must have been, because here are all these people that you don't know, and there's so much you still don't know. And that sort of getting along, like going along to get along, is a huge part of the story. So,
Yeah. So this is actually what I want to set up. I started hallucinating in a guest house. I was taken to a guest house. In the guest house, they had a mini intervention for me because they all thought I was on drugs
right.
and that I was a drug addict. And the woman who ran the guest house, her son had overdosed on drugs. And so his shrine was in her apartment. And so she told me, crying, that I didn't know what I was doing to my mother by putting these drugs into my body. And she was crying, so I cried right back. And I had like a moment of hitting rock bottom, which was not my rock bottom.
Right. Right.
It was like somebody else's rock bottom I was hitting.
Because you were going along with what people
Right.
told you. Yeah.
And so they put me to bed for the night. I started hallucinating. We got in touch with my parents somehow. My mom worked in IT, in central Ohio. And by some crazy confluence, one of her coworkers had family in Hyderabad. And she sent word to them to come help me.
Oh,
And so what they did was I was hallucinating really heavily. These two people walk in, call me by my name, tell me that my mother is really worried about me, and then they start praying over me. And this is, sometimes people go to memoirs for life lessons, um, things that they should learn. And one of the life lessons in my book is if somebody is hallucinating, don't pray over them because you don't know what you're doing.
right, right,
Because my hallucinations were different, but as soon as God and the devil got involved, my hallucinations
right.
became much more dire,
Wow,
and my soul was at risk rather than just me forgetting something.
wow.
And so then my hallucinations became very God centric. And God, when he appeared to me as Jim Henson, which as a Gen X kid, that totally makes sense.
Gen
Um,
X, yes.
yeah, I mean, Jim Henson was God,
Right.
the creator. Um,
And in a kind of a weird literal way too, like, the puppet master. I mean, he is, yeah.
yeah. And in this, God had given me like a tour of the cosmos and said if I wanted to attain the next level of experience, I needed to remember a quatrain and this spoken code. And if I could remember that, then I would be reunited with all my loved ones. I would attain the next level of experience, all of that. And so that's in the midst of where we're dropped in these pages.
Perfect. Perfect.
Strapped down, I wrestled with the riddle God had given me, the quatrain he'd asked me to recite, the one that was the secret passcode into the fourth dimension. I had the first bit. I knew the first line. God had tipped his hand on that one. I was on my way to my family, place among the angels, eternal consciousness, but something was stopping me from completing it. If you can't understand that the universe was created by Jim Henson in a studio in Burbank, it was an if then construction. I'd figured out half of it. I said it again, then again. It sounded right. I was giddy with my progress. Not long before, my soul had been dangling over the precipice. Now I knew half of the riddle of the universe. I just needed the second part. There were shapes. Blurry shapes hung over me. I was no longer in the hollowed out universe. I was no longer in the cosmic airy. I was in a bed thrashing out a problem, and the shapes were cheering me on. One was dark with glinting eyes. He called me hero. He had an Indian accent. I was in India. India was part of the answer. The most Indian thing I could think of wasn't Gandhi or blue gods or the Ganges. It was masala dosa, the wide, thin, rolled up pancakes of southern India. Fuck masala dosa, I said to myself and laughed. God is Jim Henson. Jim Henson was funny. The riddle was going to be funny. Fuck masala dosa, I said again and laughed. Then I said it again. If you can't understand that the universe was created by Jim Henson in a studio in Burbank, then fuck masala dosa. You've got. I was 2/3 of the way there. Fuck masala dosa. After 2 days of hallucinating, the olazapine and lorazepam had finally mellowed me enough to be unstrapped. The nurses brought me things to keep me occupied, newspapers, pens. Convinced that I was still failing a cosmic soul pop quiz, I crouched over the newspapers, believing that the answer was hidden somewhere in them. I was failing a test of my soul, but I was no longer punching people because of it. I circled words and drew complicated diagrams of sentences I found encoded in the desperate articles. The flat newsprint was overlaid with my fevered brain's belief that there was more than that was being communicated. And what was being communicated was essential to me for my soul's progress to eternity. I just needed to work harder to figure it out. I scratched and scribbled, making connections, trying to conjure spiritual luminosity out of the Hyderabad newspaper, the Deccan Chronicle. My biggest problem was that my pen would punch through the newsprint, dragging a rip into the page. When this happened, I'd start crying. I shared a room with another person. I'd see his shadow cast onto the privacy screen between us at night sometimes, but I never saw him. His son came over to see me all the time. His name was Amol. He was 10 and eager to practice his English. The room, about 10 by 20 feet, was painted the same color green as the scrubs the nurses wore, just dustier. The ceiling was black with spider webs in the corners. These spider webs moved when I wasn't looking. I'd catch them creeping closer to me out of my peripheral vision. Sometimes the spider webs disappeared entirely and the corners were clean and clear. They were sneaky that way. The floor was tiled, but seemingly tiled by 5 workmen working from different plans. There was no pattern to the floor. Colors, shapes, sizes all shoved together. When I wasn't staring at the newspapers, I was staring at these tiles. The answer could be anywhere. The world was a sentence that I needed to read in order to graduate to the next level of experience, but nothing was making sense. I shouted a lot. I kept waiting for the door to open and for the police to appear. I was waiting to be held accountable for all the things I couldn't remember. I had done such horrible things to people, hurt them, made them cry, abused all of their hard work with my violent disregard. If only I could put together the answer to the riddle Jim Henson had asked me, then I'd be free. I'd keep all the evil away, even the awful stuff that I had done, if I could only finish the riddle. My room became a revolving door of visitors. Patients from other wards came to visit me. I felt so guilty that I refused no one. Anyone who asked was given the cigarettes that kept showing up on the tiny table next to my bed. Strange men in hospital gowns sat on my bed and practiced their conversational English. I was going to rebuild my life by being good. Nurses lingered by my bedside, gave me heaping plates full of curd rice, and teased me by asking if I wanted some masala dosa. One nurse told me that I was the most entertaining psychotic that they'd ever had. I'd black out and then snap back awake in no discernible pattern. I'd wake up walking, wake up in the middle of a conversation, the other person looking at me expecting me to finish a sentence I didn't remember starting. There were moments when everything was clear. I was in a mental institution in India. This was weird, but I was safe. Everything was going to be all right. I had doctors who squeezed my shoulders and called me Mr. David. There was progress. The worst was over. Then there'd be a sparkle in my periphery, and I'd black out. I wasn't sure where I'd woken up this time, but there was water in a plastic cup on a table next to my bed and a small brown boy peeking around a privacy curtain at me. The boy was biting the curtain and he was rocking back and forth. "A mole," a man's voice said behind the curtain. "Don't bother the American." I had an IV coming out of my arm and I was wearing a hospital gown. I woke up and the sun had shifted on the wall and the plastic cup was gone. A man who looked like Jim Henson but fatter was sitting in the chair beside me. He was a white man, mid-50s, in a kurta soiled around the armpits, and he was smoking. "At least you're not tied down anymore," he said. I woke up again, but maybe that's wrong. I never remembered going to sleep, so maybe I wasn't waking up during all of this. Maybe it was just flashes of lucidity. My blood felt heavy with all of the medications coursing through me. When I woke up in the middle of conversations, I'd apologize to whomever I was talking to. I was always apologizing. I'd done so many terrible things. I spent 5 minutes moving my jaw. The man behind the privacy curtain was snoring. I pushed my tongue around my teeth. They tasted funny. The plastic cup was back. Directly across from me was a door with a glass window embedded with wire hatching. I could see people through the window moving back and forth. Women looked in and stared at me until I noticed them, and then they disappeared. A doctor came in. He saw that I was watching the window. "Don't mind the nurses," he said. "You gave them a fright." What am I doing here? I asked. Recuperating, he answered. My teeth taste like paste. Can you tell me about these things that you have written? He knelt by a pile of newspapers and picked one up. For a moment, I thought I was a journalist. On the papers, between and over the printed words, were scribbles and diagrams. They covered 5 pages of the paper, blue pen and black pen. The newspapers were soft from being overhandled. I did this? You'll be fine. I was just curious. He dropped the paper onto the chair. You are under the care of Woodlands Neuropsychiatric Center. I'm in India? You have had quite a time here, it seems. I woke up and Jim Henson was back. He hovered over me, putting the back of his hand against my forehead. Do you need anything, Dave? Like soda or candy or magazines or books or cigarettes? It was too long of a list from a man I didn't know, so I said cigarettes. Cool, man, I'll be back. You just get better. Take it easy. I don't know what they're telling you, but you're going to be fine. Get that poison out of your system. That's important. He grabbed the IV bag and tried to read the label. I don't know what poison they're pumping into you now, but that other stuff will be gone soon. Jim Henson reached into a bag slung around his neck. I brought you some of my poems. The ones I was telling you about? The cycle? You know, maybe you could look at them. He slid the sheaf of papers under my arm. I woke up crying. The room was dark. I lit a cigarette and watched the little red dot float toward my mouth, glow brighter, then float away. When I turned my head, it felt like my brain took a few seconds to catch up. I crushed the butt out onto the bed frame, little flecks of red falling to the floor, and lit another one. I smoked until dawn. I often woke up in the middle of conversations with Amol. I could hear Amol's father's voice, and sometimes when he had his lamp on at night, I could make out his silhouette through the privacy screen, but I never saw the man. It was a room with 4 beds, but 2 were empty. I had the one by the window. We're going to America, right, Mr. David? You're taking me to America? Sure, I guess. He seemed like a good kid, and America was such a big place. How hard could it be to get to America? Amol, I need you. Please come here. His father spoke only English in the room. Jim Henson, I was too embarrassed to ask his real name since he seemed to know me so well, was sitting by my bed and chain-smoking with me. His dirty kurta was stretched tight over his stomach. Dave, I went through this, man. You get to this point where you just feel like everything goes awry, and it's like you realize that the rest of the world is crazy, and that's when they lock you up. It's like they have this sensor that gets set off when you realize how full of it everything is, and they come and get you and lock you up until you start thinking they're important again. 3 birds flew up and sat on the ledge. Their wings, brushing against the windows, made clicking noises. Jim Henson tapped his cigarette out and then lit another. But guys like us know better. Guys like us know how to fake it. Let them think we believe their nonsense. Let us take what we learn here and take it out there. He held his hands like he was holding a brick and moved them from left to right. That's when and how the world gets changed. It's the only way it's ever been changed. Jim Henson examined the tip of his newly lit cigarette. Guys like us. It was night. Time was a roulette wheel. Any moment could be any moment. Close my eyes, instant time travel. Right now it was pitch black. There was a fluorescent light from a building next door, casting everything in that grainy green light. As I smoked, I noticed bruises on each of my wrists, purple stripes 3 inches wide. I slid off the bed and moved as close to the window as my IV would allow, and marveled over these bruises. I wanted to stick a lit cigarette into them. A mole stood by the window naming things. There is an ox cart. There is a vendor. There is a car. There is a girl. There is a man. He turned and smiled at me. It was nice to have a friend. His father called out from his bed, That is fine, Amol, but what are these people doing? The girl is holding hands with the woman. The man is drinking tea. The ox is eating the refuse. Trash, Amol, his father said. Americans say trash. Jim Henson came back often. There were always at least 3 packs of cigarettes on the table and fresh piles of poetry. A mole started running cigarettes to his father. Ask Mr. David if I could have 2 cigarettes. I would have one of the cigarettes lit by the time a mole cleared the curtain. Matches weren't allowed on his side. We'd gotten in trouble before. In our room, I was the one with match privileges. A mole's father had a visitor. They spoke briefly. I heard the crinkle of newspaper more than their conversation. The man looked over at me as he left. He was well dressed, gold spectacles worn low on his nose, starched shirt tucked tightly into his pressed slacks. He came over and shook my hand, beaming. "And how are you finding our country here, sir?" "It's great," I said. "Have you seen the Taj Mahal yet?" "I'm not sure if I have." "It's wonderful. Go during a full moon. I think it's more expensive for foreigners, but surely worth it. Truly spectacular." Did he not notice my hospital gown? Did he not see the bruises on my wrists from the straps, the IV dangling from my bedside that was topping off my brain with chemical solution? "Are you a Christian, sir?" "Sure, I guess." I felt a twinge at this mention of religion, but didn't know what to attribute it to. The man jingled change in his pocket as he spoke. It is during these difficult times that our Lord shows himself in his true glory. He leaned in conspiratorially, but didn't lower his voice. "Be glad you're Christian, son. These damned Hindus were born to suffer." I didn't dream at night. The olazapine made sure that I experienced nothing in my brain that didn't come through my eyes and ears and nose. It was hard to think, much less dream. Consciousness was on or off. When it was on, I was groggy and confused. When it was off, I drifted in a place as unremarkable and viscous as wood glue.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. Can I first say, I am so sorry this happened to you.
Thanks.
I mean, really, what a horrible, bizarre, confusing, right now in the story, we don't know what one of the answers are of this riddle. I suppose we could, do you want to do the spoiler of what the poison was in your system? Because you were not a drug addict. You were not, all these reasons that people who found you and helped you might have used as common reasons why someone is kind of losing themselves, I say in a loose way, is not the answer to the big riddle of why you were experiencing all these hallucinations and everything else. So maybe if you want to.
Yeah, it was a result of a malarial prophylaxis called Lariam, generic name Mefloquine. And I got out easy compared to other people who've taken this drug. Suicide is a side effect, a known side effect. Homicide is a known side effect. And this drug was used on the military for years because it was cost effective. You only had to take it once a week. And so it was used, but it wasn't sort of acknowledged that these side effects were real. The prodromal sort of effects that happen before the big event happens with this drug is increased aggression, confusion, and I always forget the third one. But it's all the things that you would have in a foreign place.
Right.
And so it's hard to know that especially if you're in the military, if you're having these side effects or if you're just responding naturally to your situation where people are trying to kill you.
Right.
But yeah, I've met a lot of the military. In Canada, this was a big deal. Still is a big deal because a lot of Canadians were given this drug as peacekeepers when they were in Rwanda during the genocide. And the things those men went through, witnessing a genocide while hallucinating, are unspeakable.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I've met these men, and they struggle mightily
Yeah.
to this day.
Yeah. Well, that is, yeah. I mean, that is just really so hard to comprehend, and that it took a long time to. Is it still used today? It's not being used so
It's
much.
still used rarely, but
Yeah.
still used. Yeah, it's got a big black box warning
Yeah.
about the side effects, and the side effects becoming long lasting or permanent. And I get people who write me who've been on this drug, who even recently have been on this drug and are still experiencing the side effects and the upheaval in their life. And so it's intense.
Yeah. I'm certainly curious to ask you more about that, which you do, you don't have to necessarily share, but I'm also very curious to ask about the writing of the experience, because to get back to the writing part of it,
Hmm.
um, this writing is just I always have trouble describing the writing, but it's so visceral, and you put us amidst this, it's like an onion peeling of what happens next, and trying to figure yourself out, and this protectiveness, yet vulnerability of kind of going along with whatever anybody tells you about yourself, because you have no reason to doubt them. So, this idea of faking it is also a really powerful one to me, and one that comes up in the section that you read with Jim Henson. And Jim Henson turns out to be, is that your friend Veda? I hope I'm remembering. No, no. So Jim
This,
Henson was someone else entirely.
this was one of the white people that Veda had found.
Okay. Oh, okay. And he brought poetry, so writing sort of ties into it. So there's this like melding of things that were kind of true and kind of not true, and what the mind does that is expressed so, again, just so beautifully in your description where you started with this, is like trying to figure out this quatrain, and Jim Henson being part of it. And what does our brain do when we're trying, like, you just feel this yearning to make sense of something, and when the details that get filled in are sort of inane and ridiculous, and also just populated by the images and things that are around you. So, yeah, how did you come to all that again in the writing of that?
So I tell this story to my students a lot. I'll try to do an abridged version of it. When I was a kid, we had a television on the first floor. We had two bathrooms, one on the first floor and one on the second floor. I was the youngest. And so whenever a commercial break would come on, my sisters would hip check me out of the way for the bottom bathroom. And so I had to run upstairs to go to the bathroom upstairs. They would yell up through the heat exchange when the commercial was coming to an end. And so I would run. And when I would run, I would get to the edge of the steps and I slipped. And for a moment, I was flying. I was 8 years old and I was flying, and I had never flown before, and it was amazing. And then I wasn't flying anymore. And then I hit the steps and it hurt. And then I flew again and hurt, flew again and hurt. And I got to the bottom of the steps and I was lying there, and my parents would show up and they would say, "What happened?" And I'd say, "I don't know." And they said, "You fell down the stairs." And I was like, "Oh." I fell down the stairs. And the way most people tell stories of trauma is they start with, I fell down the stairs.
Mm,
And that's the sense making thing. And that sentence bulldozes all of that potential
right.
wild chaos of the experience and makes it tidy and neat. And so people often will write their story of trauma starting out with, I fell down the stairs, and then not know where to go from there.
Right.
And it's like, because you've already solved the problem. Like, you have to go back into the chaos before you knew what was happening was happening. And that's where the story is. That sort of cloudy, evanescent sort of thing that you don't know what's happening is happening. And to go there as a writer is a really interesting place to really invest in that place of not knowing. And to write from a position of not knowing is, I feel like, the way to write. Like, I don't know what's going to happen next. This is what's happening now.
That is perfect. Like, yes, because this is exactly what you do. You populate the moment of the experiential part of it, not just falling down the stairs, even to use your analogy, but I was flying and then it
Yeah.
hurt, and I was flying and then it hurt. And to go back to something you said before you read, you were very interested in what it means to lose time. And that's exactly what my experience was in reading this, is that we completely lose time. It is not until I feel like very, very deep into the book. You have some pictures in there of your train ticket and of things that you got from the hospital. I don't want to give too much away about that, really, but you bring us deeply into lifetimes of experience in a very murky, time twisted time, because we have no idea. And the I was also thinking how the writing is so sharp and so clear about something that is so murky and hazy and completely unknown.
Yeah.
So it is just amazing for that ability to exist and spend that much time in some of those really painful places. And so they are all different too. I mean, these different hallucinations that you had, there's such different things in their repetition because they keep happening again. I mean, how long did it take you when you were working on the memoir part of this? I mean, going back into each one of those, how much is memory of this, or your, I don't want to say imagination, it's not your imagination, but your experience of recalling hallucinations? That's just got to be so painful, bizarre, strange. It's not part of what we commonly experience, in our regular day-to-day lives, or even other types of trauma or issues that we go through.
Yeah, I feel like hallucinations, disorientation, that sort of place, we sort of allied over it in our lives because it didn't happen, right?
Right, right.
But the stuff that didn't happen affected me really deeply. And so these hallucinations that I had are real to me, and I still feel them. And I sort of have a weird mourning about them, even though none of it happened.
Yeah.
Um, and there's still a part of me that's like, when, in the long, dark night of my soul, that like, I failed. I failed. I had a chance to transcend, and I failed because that nugget of doubt has been implanted in me so deeply that it's I sound like I'm a crazy person. Um,
No,
but
no, but I want to understand, like, what did you fail?
whatever test God had given me, I had this
Um,
opportunity and that
right.
God had given me,
Ah,
and,
wow.
and I failed it. And so now, you know, I do laundry and do the dishes and live this sort of mundane life when I had this opportunity to live in fantastical realms.
Wow. Guilt is a powerful force, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know, again, I make this, I bring in this story from Alan Moore, writing about Superman, where Superman has this hallucination that he is back on Krypton and he has a son. And in order to come out of the hallucination, he has to tell his son that the son isn't real. And like that
Yeah.
is such an intense moment to be able to say, you, this person I love, aren't real. I have to go be real again. Um,
It's a self-destructive thing to have to populate
yeah,
in order to move through it almost.
yeah, yeah. So you have to burn bridges in order to come back to laundry and dishes and walking the dog.
Yeah. Did the writing of the book, that was part of the process for you?
It was really hard. Like I had a ritual. I had this little office over a 7-Eleven. It was a windowless office that smelled of taquitos. And I brought my dog with me, Sally, wonderful dog, rest in peace.
Mm.
Um, and when I would get done writing, I would sit with my dog, pet her, sit on the couch, and listen to 90s hip hop and play stupid games on my phone to sort of transition out of that place. My poor wife, I would come home crying often, and she'd be like, "What happened?" And I was like, "You know what happened."
Yeah.
um, and so, yeah, it was difficult, but it was worth it. It was worth it.
Well, it, as you say, it had to be told. And that's another thing about the writing process that I find so mysterious and hard to uh, re- release yourself over
Yeah,
to let it be what it needs to be or what it wants to be or go where it wants to go.
yeah. I always talk with my students about there's what you intend to write and then what you write.
Yeah.
And what you intend to write is great, really great. It gets you to the chair, wonderful, but you have to give that up almost immediately and let what you write be the thing that you're paying attention to. Because otherwise, you'll just berate yourself for the rest of your life that you didn't write what you wanted to write. And it's like, no, no, no. What you wrote is its own thing, it's its own powerful thing. And that what you wanted to write sits like a tumor on your eye and sort of affects the way you read what you have written. And you have to excise that tumor and sort of surrender your ego to this thing that you have written,
Mm,
because writing is its own kind of thinking. It's not dictation from the self, right? You don't dictate from your ego onto the page. Instead, the writing, the music of the language draws forth from us things that we didn't know that we knew. And
exactly.
that's where writing is powerful and beautiful to me. And that's where the magic of it happens.
Yeah. I mean, that in itself is not unlike your own discovery of yourself again when
Mm.
through doing all the things that you had to do through your parents who came and helped put you back together again, so that's a little too tidy, but uh,
Yeah. Mm.
came and said you're coming home again, and then but you couldn't. It is a weird, again, sort of this very self-referential, oh gosh, there's a name for this that I heard just recently on a podcast, and I don't remember what it's called, but it's that it, I think it's that picture of the snake that's eating its own tail.
Chorus.
Yeah. It's sort of like you're trying to figure out who you are, and yet you can't help but be who you are in the
Right.
figuring out of who you are.
Yeah.
And thus even the title is like, there it is. That's the answer to the riddle is me. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. I mean, and it's at once incredibly simple and straightforward, but yet not at all. Not at all. Um, and your self-discovery through the reflection of yourself in the people you speak with and trying to sort of ascertain these clues. That was another part that I found very curious, that it's apparently not in your nature to just sort of declare, I have no clue. I don't actually remember you at all, and I have no idea like I feel like for me that would be I would just be like nothing but a full disclosure in every moment, like I have no clue what's going on right now, period.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was so ashamed.
Oh,
I was so ashamed, like I was hurting people by forgetting them.
well, yeah, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
Um, and like I had this girlfriend and I didn't remember her.
right.
And like she loved me.
Yeah,
And like that responsibility of having someone love you is intense. Is really hard, but it's also like I can't
right,
reciprocate here because I don't know. I don't know
right.
our relationship.
And you
Uh,
sort of had to live through it again to get to that point and
yeah,
remember yourself. Yeah.
yeah.
What was most daring about this book for you? Because everything about this experience is just, I mean, I can think of a million answers, but what was and you also said when you were writing fiction, you didn't feel there was an inherent risk. What was the risk in this once you faced it?
Just opening myself up to it again and opening myself up to people living in that experience. Um, One of my first readings that I gave, this kid from my high school showed up at the reading, and he was a bully. He was one of my bullies in high school.
Oh, wow.
And during the Q&A session, he demonstrated again that he was a bully. And so
Holy
sort of like,
shit.
it was just sort of like I was being that vulnerable, and there was my bully in the room.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was that was the risk. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
That's like your worst nightmare coming true.
right. It's nice that he has a through line though. Like there was no change in him. He was
Wow. I
man.
know. I'm like waiting for and he came up to me and no, no, no. Wow.
No, he was.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
So this book is now 10 years old. You know, I wonder how you view the book now through your decade older self as it's still out there and you're doing new things all the time.
Yeah. Um, Like, I'm proud of the book. I have fondness for the book. I'm always rewriting the book in my head and finding new things that I left out. And
Mm.
oh, I should have talked about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's nice to have it out in the world.
Yeah. I'm a little afraid to ask, do you still re-experience any of these reverberations of it still?
Yeah, I have depression and anxiety that weren't a part of my life before.
Yeah.
I've been hospitalized for depression um, a couple times, and it's just, you know, life just doesn't stop. And so, yeah, I do. I still have issues.
Yeah. I'm so sorry about that.
That's all right.
And
This is my biggest pet peeve um, about having written a book about this. And this, when I was on book tour, people would ask me this, and it would drive me crazy. They would say, "Well, now that you've written a book about this and you're married now, aren't you in some way appreciative of what happened to you because it got you to this place?" And I feel like this is a very American way of
hmm,
thinking about the world.
yeah.
You have to be appreciative of everything that's happened to you because in order to be happy today, you have to be happy for everything that happened to get you to this place. And I think that's crazy. Um, and I think
Yeah.
it's crazy because it showcases a lack of imagination of what a life could have been if this hadn't happened.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm haunted by this life that could have been
Yeah.
had this not happened.
That's yeah. I can imagine that, and that's definitely I feel like that is a phenomena, to say, well, but if it wasn't for this,
Yeah.
it does sort of suggest that there are it almost goes back to again sort of the fact of our identities or our selfhoods, whatever you want to refer to that, not being tied up in what the tragedy, trauma, difficulty was, because we are in fact still ourselves, and it doesn't mean that there wouldn't have been something like we still would have had, nobody gets through life unscathed, and frankly life unscathed is almost its own type of scathed. you know
Yeah.
so yeah, to suggest that if not for this you wouldn't have something to be appreciative of, and that's just
Yeah.
not true.
That's not true.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for this conversation. Is there anything else that you want to say? I mean, I will also add, this is not the only thing you've written. You have another book out in the world. You are teaching writing. You are writing all the time.
Yep. I've got another collection. I have a collection of essays that's, out with my agent in the world about depression and pain.
Mhm.
Um, so it's called I'm Happier Than You, Essays on Depression.
Thank you so much, David. I loved the book, loved the conversation, really enjoy talking with you. So thank you so much for your thoughts today.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh boy, so much to think about in that conversation. Love the comment about life just doesn't stop. And I feel like the word that kept coming up for me through this whole episode was populate. Like, what do we pour into each moment when we are living through life in real time and grappling with the things that we are not necessarily appreciative of, but that, have shaped what our lives are day to day? very interesting. The question that I guess has remained for me and that has come up for me, certainly before as well as after this conversation with him, is what would my life be like had I not grown up as a Christian Scientist? It's something so deep inside of me that I cannot imagine myself without it, yet I do wonder what kind of my own brain space could have been allocated to something else besides kind of all the undoing that I've had to do, that I have been doing for so many decades after that. It is something to think about in the space between reading and writing. If you have made it this far, hooray, you get a gold star. Maybe I should give out gold stars. If you write to me and say, I made it to the end of Daring to Tell, I will send you a gold star. Would you like a gold star? I don't know if that even means anything to people anymore. I did like it when I was 6, but I'm not sure I need a gold star anymore. Anyway, I am very glad that you did make it this far, and I have at least one of 3 things I would love for you to do. All right, are you ready? 1, go check out David Stuart MacLean's book and check him out. I will have a link for that info in the show notes. 2, hit that little plus button in your podcast app to follow Daring to Tell. My episodes come out monthly, so it's going to be a little bit before something else comes out. But if you follow, it will pop up in your podcast app automatically. 3, tell someone, tell a writer, a friend, your book group, your writing group about this podcast if you've enjoyed it. And finally, I do have one more. I hope you'll sign up for my newsletter, The Rado. No, it's not The Rado. I call it The Redo, of course, because my name is Michelle Rado. You can sign up for it at my website, michellerado.com. I would love to share more with you through that as well. A giant thank you to my husband, Phil Rado, who is the singer and songwriter for all the music you hear on this podcast. Today, I am going to leave you with the full song he wrote called Nothing Like That, which I think fit today's conversation particularly well. All right, until next month, thank you so much for daring to listen.
I never did see nothing like that. I never did dream nothing like that. I imagined all the trees could see, the sun could move and the moon would slide into a place to wait for eternity. I never did say nothing like that. I never could hear nothing like that. I made an excuse that the world could arrange for my mood to change, not just wonder how to wait for eternity. It's all just brave talk. It's all such strange talk. It's not even straight talk, and we'll forget it all. I wanted to see something like that. I wanted to know something like that. How I can grow, let it all go like the wind in the years that are moving along to a place we call eternity. never feel nothing like that. Never as real, nothing like that. I imagine all the trees can see, the sun can move, the moon will slide. Enter the place where we'll spend eternity. I imagine all the trees can see, the sun will move and the moon will slide. Enter the place where we'll spend eternity.